After listening to hundreds of wilderness encounter reports, I noticed something disturbing. The moment people become emotionally reactive, the phenomenon disappears. Not occasionally, consistently. Hunters, trackers, campers, park rangers, different people, same pattern. And once I noticed it, I started seeing it everywhere. Because according to countless encounter reports, the moment fear spikes, the moment someone becomes mentally chaotic, the moment they try forcing the experience, everything will stop. Instantly, the sound disappears, the movement stops, the atmosphere changes, almost like the environment itself is rejecting the observer. And the deeper I looked into this pattern, the stranger it became, because maybe these encounters aren't random at all. Maybe the forest responds differently depending on the state of the person entering it. One hunter described hearing massive movement pacing him through dense forest for nearly 10 minutes. Heavy steps, branches breaking, something large staying just outside visibility. But the second he raised his rifle, everything stopped. Completely. No footsteps, no birds, no insects, just silence. Another witness described feeling overwhelming pressure moments before seeing what he called a massive upright figure crossing between trees near a riverbank. But strangely, he said the fear came after the sighting. What he remembered most was the atmosphere beforehand, the stillness, the feeling that the forest somehow became aware of him. And then there was a former park ranger in British Columbia. According to his account, he spent hours actively searching remote wilderness areas, hoping to finally experience something unexplained. Nothing happened until eventually he gave up. He sat beside a river in complete silence. And according to him, the moment he mentally stopped searching, everything changed. Birds stopped, the wind disappeared, even the sound of the river suddenly felt distant. Then something crossed silently between two cedar trees less than 50 yards away. Towering, human-shaped, gone within seconds, and he never experienced anything like it again. And strangely, these stories all contain the exact same environmental detail. Silence, not normal silence. Witnesses describe an oppressive stillness where the forest feels electrically charged. Some indigenous traditions called it the forest holding its breath. Different language, same pattern. That's when this stopped feeling like random folklore to me, because once you isolate the pattern, the implications become difficult to ignore. People describe it entering altered psychological states before encounters happen. Heightened awareness, extreme stillness, the sudden feeling of being observed, and most importantly, many witnesses describe the experience collapsing the moment they become emotionally reactive. That detail appears constantly, which raises a disturbing possibility. What if the observer matters more than the encounter itself? Because modern humans no longer enter nature quietly, we enter it distracted, filming, performing, expecting stimulation. We don't observe reality anymore. We attack with attention. And according to some researchers, the mental state may fundamentally interfere with perception itself. And this is where the pattern becomes deeply unsettling, because multiple theories from completely different fields strangely begin overlapping here. Consciousness research, observer effect theory, biocentrism, even ancient indigenous beliefs about wilderness intelligence, different frameworks, but all pointing toward the same idea, that consciousness may not passively observe reality. It may participate in it. And if that's true, then maybe these entities, unseen beings, forest people, aren't hiding physically at all. Maybe they're filtering perception itself. That would explain encounter details that make absolutely no sense under normal assumptions. Why footprints abruptly stop? Why the cameras fail? Why aggressive pursuit almost always ends in nothing? Why people standing side by side sometimes report completely different experiences? Because maybe the seeking mindset itself collapses the encounter.
Felt the air suddenly change?
And this is where the theory of the internal mirror becomes impossible to ignore.
Not the weather.
The idea is
anxiety,
simple. The forest reflects the psychological
sudden pressure,
coherence of the observer back at them.
The atmosphere
not
feels
metaphorically,
heavier,
literally.
more like dense.
Your emotional state,
and for
mental,
a moment, it feels
fragmentation,
like the world around you is
fear,
washing.
Ego, constant internal noise,
Here's the disturbing
all become
part.
filters shaping
people
perception
this
itself.
Exact same feeling over
which
and over
means
again
most people never
experience
high-strangeness
in the
phenomenon.
Woods, before seeing something they
not because
swear
nothing is
shouldn't
there,
have been there,
but because modern consciousness has become too fractured to perceive subtle intelligence.
At first, I thought
not invisible,
it was just fear,
unreadable.
But then I started
and
noticing
according
the
to
pattern.
This theory,
different
an encounter
people,
is never one-sided.
Different places, different
the
stories.
Unseen being is not simply
signs.
Being observed by
the
you.
Air gets heavy.
It is observing whether your awareness is stable
unnatural.
enough to perceive it at all.
And
that idea sounds absurd at first, until you realize how many encounter stories follow the exact same progression. The silence,
Hunters describe the woods
pressure,
suddenly going quiet.
the feeling of being watched.
Campers talk about
then
overwhelming pressure appearing out of nowhere.
The impossible appears.
People deep in the remote
and you guys, I'm not saying every strange feeling in the woods is paranormal.
Into something.
And I'm not claiming every encounter story is real.
They ever saw
but I do think there's a reason the same psychological patterns
many of them
repeat across completely unrelated experiences
before it happens.
Because
not panic,
maybe people have
excitement,
spent decades searching forests for physical proof,
kind of
while completely ignoring the role consciousness
like
itself may play in the encounter.
Changed and shifted.
And if that's true,
some people
then the greatest barrier between
humanity
humanity and the unknown may never have been distance,
no wind, no
or
insects,
technology, or a lack of evidence
sound at all.
Maybe the barrier was coherence.
And then the feeling
because if
that
certain forms of intelligence only become visible through resonance,
because it's kind of
then
difficult
the observer
to explain.
becomes part of the
you can't
equation.
Photograph it,
and that raises a question that becomes harder to ignore.
People remember it.
The longer you think
Years
about
later,
it.
They still describe
the reason
same
most
details.
People never experience the unexplained.
The silence
is because modern consciousness has become too loud to perceive it.
Aware.
Now, have you ever experienced a moment in nature where the atmosphere suddenly changed?
They knew something was wrong.
Where the forest became unnaturally silent? Or
almost like
it felt like the environment somehow became aware of you? Comment below. I want to know how many have experienced that feeling.
That's what makes this difficult
before something
to
unexplained happened.
Because people who never
maybe the forest doesn't reveal itself randomly.
from completely
Maybe it
different
responds
backgrounds
to the mind
keep
standing
describing
inside of it.
the exact same sensations.
Thanks for watching.